This is Reporting Duluth, and it's a story of the 150 years of the Duluth News Tribune, which is our local paper, which the family was actively involved with here at Glensheen. And so what you see behind me are 17 4-foot by 6-foot photographs, and then immediately adjacent to it is the story from the Duluth News Tribune. For example, on the lighter side is Duluth 1870. And so you can see Superior Street and how rough and kind of dirty it looks. If you look carefully, you can actually see the sewage line down the middle of the street. And we did that because in the small photograph that you usually have in a book, you would never notice those details. But now that it's so large, you see the humanity of these 1870s photos. It doesn't just become that story you hear from your grandfather. This was a pretty rigorous process because it's hard to choose only 17 photos of the last 150 years. And we really try to focus on what are those major elements of our community? What are those things that are still the kind of our foundation today? And then some of those moments of, these are really, frankly, terrible moments in our history that are part of our history and part of our culture still today. Because history is not always the nostalgic. Frankly, sometimes it's really awful, and that's part of our long history as well. If newspapers didn't exist in our small towns, our mid-sized towns, and our large towns, I don't know what we would even know about the past, because so much of the history that we dig up in archives comes straight out of the newspaper record. And so our community story, I mean, you could argue is being told by historians. It's not. It's usually being told by the paper, and then historians then use that as a secondary source. And so it is our community's history. There's very few other people who are doing this, especially day to day. And so without your local community newspapers, this isn't possible. But frankly, half of the research we've done at Glensheen wouldn't even be possible. I wouldn't be able to tell you that Chester was a big fan of boating in Lake Superior without the newspaper. All of that came from the old D&T records. And I think in the era we live in right now, I think this is a clear example of why we need a newspaper more than we've ever needed a newspaper. To have that independent voice is incredibly important.